how to reflect the lives and the experience and the perspective and the needs and the concerns of this vastly diverse community. How can we show their faces and their images and tell their stories?
I'm Justin Silverman of the New England First Amendment Coalition. A quick reminder to check out our 30-minute skills classes at nefac.org/30-minute skills. These are short, practical lessons on journalism and the First Amendment that you can use immediately to improve your work. Our next class is Data Visualization 101 on May 25th at noon. Register and learn more at nefac.org/30-minute skills. I'm here today with Barbara Roessner, a longtime NEFAC board member and founding editor of the New Bedford Light, a soon-to-be-launched nonprofit newsroom in New Bedford, Mass. Bobby, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Justin.
Bobby, before I have you share the work that you and your staff are doing to launch the New Bedford Light, can you start off by describing for us the history of journalism in and around New Bedford?
Well, I'm a recent transplant. I moved here 3 years ago from Connecticut, where I spent most of my journalism career. And I can tell you, as a relative newcomer to the area, it's difficult to find out what is going on. There is a daily newspaper, the Standard Times, which is owned by Gannett. And I always make a point of saying how much I appreciate and empathize with the folks in that newsroom. I know what it's like to work in those newsrooms with minimal resources and a huge sense of mission and so much demand and need out there. And it's so difficult to cover all the things that need to be covered. And so I appreciate, I respect, but the coverage, the local coverage, as in so many cities across the country, cities and towns across the country, has plummeted in recent years. There's a radio station, an AM radio station, that does a good job at local news. I would say the Standard Times, breaking news, does a good job at breaking news in high school sports. But there isn't that kind of in-depth public service journalism on really, really complex and challenging issues facing the city. And that is where we see the need, the greatest need, and that is where we are going to try to come into the local media ecosystem, not duplicate, be really disciplined about not duplicating what's already out there, but really focusing on the in-depth work.
So as you know, as a board member of NEFAC, you know we have our First Amendment and Free Press program. We have conversations with journalists and editors like yourself all the time, talking about these challenges facing local journalism. As you just mentioned, these are challenges facing newsrooms and communities throughout the entire country. So why New Bedford? Was there something in particular about New Bedford, the New Bedford community, that made you want to launch a nonprofit newsroom there? What in particular drew you to that location?
Well, it is a truly fascinating small city, not unlike the cities I've worked in Connecticut throughout my career: Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport. Very diverse, large, economically distressed population, large immigrant population. New Bedford in particular has an incredible history. Okay, I think most of us know that Herman Melville set Moby Dick here. Frederick Douglass learned to preach here. It was the first place he registered to vote. He escaped as a slave by ship to New Bedford. It just has this amazing history and architecture and literary vibe and artistic vibe, incredible, thriving, vibrant arts community, and immigrants from all over the world, and new waves of immigrants all the time. Very large Portuguese population, obviously, left over from the whaling days. One of the reasons we're calling the online digital news site, the New Bedford Light, is because this is the city that lit the world with whale oil. So there's this amazing history, amazing waves of immigrants, which continue mostly now from Central and South America. There is actually a Mayan population in New Bedford that does not speak Spanish. It speaks an indigenous language. When we put out a survey to the community to try and understand what the media habits and preferences and needs are, we put the survey out in English and Spanish and Portuguese and Cape Verdean Creole. I think that says a lot about the amazing texture and range of the city. It's also the largest fishing port on the East Coast. And we have just learned the Biden administration just gave the green light to a big offshore wind project called Vineyard Wind. And that is going to be just huge, huge for New Bedford. So it's just such an interesting community, and it requires a lot of different kinds of journalism, is what I would say. And it's not, it's not an easy, because of the diversity of the population. It's not an easy population to engage in civic life. You really have to work at it and have people who represent the community doing the journalism on the ground. So it's, I guess I like a challenge. It's a big challenge. And it's also just an amazing city. The more I learn about it, the more I just kind of obsessed with it, as is my team.
So tell us about that team and about the New Bedford Light specifically. You just spoke about New Bedford, the amazing culture, the great location it is, but also the tremendous need for another news source. How are you and your colleagues at the New Bedford Light going about to meet that need and provide the news that the community is looking for?
Well, as I said, we've had to be really disciplined about how we're going to target our content, not duplicate what the other media outlets are doing. So the two areas that we've identified as being the greatest need and where there's really little to no coverage is the in-depth explanatory and investigative work on huge complex issues from COVID. The impact of COVID on the city is really the first thing that we're going deeply into, because people don't really know. There is not data out there yet, or though there will be, on how many people have died in New Bedford. Who are they? Where? How? What has been the impact on minority community versus the white community, on different occupational clusters? Just really fascinating stuff. But COVID, race, and policing is a huge issue here, as it is across America, but it's a very big issue in New Bedford. The wind industry could be a source of amazing economic opportunity for New Bedford, but that needs to be covered in a really in-depth way. Schools, obviously, and healthcare, and city government, and city politics, and of course, arts and culture, which is huge. So we want to go in depth on these big issues. Our goal is to publish one in-depth package a week. And the second area that we're really targeting is how to reflect the lives and the experience and the perspective and the needs and the concerns of this vastly diverse community. How can we show their faces and their images and tell their stories? So that's the other target that we're really going into. And we've thought very long and hard about how to make that happen. And we think that the arts and artists in New Bedford, that is the conduit for diverse representation, as opposed to letters to the editor and op-eds. There's just this incredible, thriving, creative culture from the Mayans who do amazing work with textiles and weaving, to tattoo art, to since the BLM movement, which is very big in New Bedford, there's a confluence of youth and arts and politics that we really want to tap into. So really thinking and acting very creatively about the community voices piece. We are planning to publish a fresh piece of content every weekday, Monday through Friday, not on the weekends. And that's how we're going to start. We need to start small and build. Eventually, we hope to be expanding into neighboring communities and even the South Coast region. But for now, I'm working pro bono. The publisher, Steve Taylor, is working pro bono, working hard, I would say, very hard. And I have an amazingly talented small team of freelancers who will eventually become staff, but are just very, very dedicated to this mission of informing the community, empowering the community, all of the community, with information and celebration of the local culture. So it's a tall order, and we'll see how it goes. We're working really hard, as I said. The in-depth journalism is challenging. It's data-driven, it's fact-based, it's also vivid writing. And we're looking at all kinds of digital tendrils to extend the work through podcasts and video and audio files and all the wonderful things that are at our disposal when you're all digital. We don't have to worry about space and ink and paper. And we really want our site to have a very high quality of design and visual appeal, especially because we're going to be focusing so heavily on the arts. And we hope to have an online gallery, which we're calling the Lightbox, which will feature local photography and artwork and other sorts of things like that. So my team is great. They are primarily local, and most of them actually are former staffers at the local newspaper who may have left some years ago to go and do other things. They are back with a vengeance, and they are knowledgeable and talented and dedicated. And we just brought on the probably the best known, incredibly talented local news columnist, political columnist, a guy named Jack Spillane, which is a name made for a column, Jack Spillane. And he is awesome. He's great. He's going to write 2 columns a week for us. And yeah, we just got this great team, and we're working around the clock.
It's great. It's
around the clock.
A tremendous amount of hard work and time committed to this venture, which I'm not sure if you know, but there's actually a state commission that right now is looking into local journalism, what works, what doesn't. Are there ways that here in Massachusetts, the state can support ventures like yours and provide resources to those that want to start up their own community newsrooms? To those people who are in their communities outside of New Bedford, who are looking at their current news sources, or saying, hey, we don't even have a news source of our own. There's no one covering our community. We want to start one. Do you have any suggestions or any guidance for those people on how to go about starting up their own publication and covering these community events in a way that they're not being covered now?
Well, it's interesting because there aren't very many nonprofit digital news startups in Massachusetts. There are only a few. There are many more in other parts of the country. But I would say the first thing to do is go to the website of INN, Independent News Network, because they have a very detailed playbook for how to start a nonprofit, nonpartisan local news outlet. And it's my Bible. I've read it about, I don't know, dozens of times. And I use it when I'm trying to teach others about what we're doing and how to do it, because not many people have experience with this. I have done it before. I have been involved before, so I have a little bit of knowledge about how to make it happen, but that was a number of years ago, and things are changing so fast. They change, by the year, by the month, even by the week. But there is a body of knowledge that has evolved around the how-to of this, not only the why. I think people in general, the public in general, is starting to grasp the why of the need for local news outlets, and but the how is very complex and very difficult. But I would say go to the INN playbook, and it basically lays out everything you have to do. First time you read through it, you think, this is too complicated, I'm not going to be able to do this. It's a tall order. And then there's, oh yeah, the fundraising, which is a huge effort. And we have a great fundraising team. We were able to get people in place who know the community, who can connect with the community, not just on the grassroots street level, but with the business community in New Bedford. And there are philanthropists around here who really care about the city, and some of them are from the city, who have gone on to great success elsewhere in the globe, around the globe, who know what we're doing, care about what we're doing. We have an anonymous donor who has just put up $100,000 match. Really fascinating structure to the match. For every donation under $100, the donor will match it 3 to 1. So somebody gives $50, it becomes $200 from that donor. Under $1,000, it's 2 to 1, and over $1,000, it's 1 to 1. Really ingenious, because it forces us to get into the community and the small donors, and to really do more community outreach than we're already doing. So, there's the journalism part, and then there's the business part. And we journalists don't necessarily aren't really great at the business side. We like to just do the work and publish and let somebody else figure out how to pay for it. But this requires of a founding editor to really look at all aspects of that. And I spent a lot of money. I'm spending very little money, but I spent a lot of time spreading the word about who we are, and meeting on Zoom with groups of 20, 30 community members, Chamber of Commerce, all kinds of folks, going one-on-one to people. So it's a very complex undertaking. Even just creating a website that has the kind of functionality that we're looking for, with animated graphics and lots of other functions, including how to donate money, is very complex. So we have contracted with NewsPack, which is a collaboration between Google and a bunch of nonprofit digital startups like ours, and they have created a largely plug and play system, and they are helping us to develop the site, and then they will support the site and host it. So you really need a lot of technical expertise. You need somebody with really intense technical expertise to launch a digital outlet. So that's the other part of it.
Appreciate you giving us a little bit more insight into the how, but before we wrap up here, I do want to get back to the why. You said most people are starting to understand and realize why local journalism is so important. But for those that still haven't given it much thought, or don't have a journalism background, can you explain and in real, everyday terms, why is local journalism so important? Or put it another way, if you weren't launching this new news outlet, what's the danger there? What do we risk losing? What do we have at stake?
Well, what you have at stake is, number one, the accountability is holding your elected officials to be accountable to things like honesty. And more specifically, just in very concrete, not necessarily terribly sexy terms, but there have been lots of studies done about what happens when there is no fourth estate or there's a shadow fourth estate. And the political establishment and the local government know that nobody's watching. Nobody's really, going to those meetings and reporting on what's going on and delving into documents and holding them accountable. And we've seen what happens is that participation goes down, voter turnout goes down, there are fewer people engaged in the process. And in very specific terms, the cost of government goes up, that the cost of borrowing money goes up. And so your taxes go up. And that's because nobody's watching. And they need to know, that watchdog function is really, really, really important. So that's just one really specific aspect of what happens when there is not robust local news coverage. And then there's just polarization too. The polarization that we've seen on the national level, I think is not as intense on the local level, although, what happens at the local level has largely been nationalized in the past 4 years. But you still have bubbles of folks who don't communicate with each other, don't understand each other. I think, the racial reckoning is a really good example of that. We really need to understand how different people see the world. And I'll point out that I think at least 40% of those who voted in New Bedford in the presidential election voted for Trump. We need to understand the Trump voter. We understand how they see things, how they feel about things. That's part of the diversity of New Bedford. And if you don't have a robust local news outlet, you're just not going to have that understanding of your place, of your city, of your neighbors, of the people in your community. So it's a mission. It's a mission, and we're pretty obsessed with it and dedicated to it. And we're gonna make it happen and hopefully help New Bedford be a better place.
Bobby, I appreciate all the time you took today to give us a little bit more insight into what's going on within that newsroom and really the importance of the New Bedford Light and local journalism generally and the role that it plays in our democracy. So thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to NEFAC too. You do great work. Appreciate it very much.